The Capitol felt different that morning. Reporters rushed through the halls. Camera crews scrambled for space, and staffers whispered as if something explosive was about to drop. No one knew exactly what Congressman Thomas Massie planned to reveal, but everyone sensed it would shake Washington. When Massie stepped into the oversight hearing room, silence hit instantly. He placed a thick folder on the desk, adjusted his microphone, and looked straight at the chair. "Today," he said calmly, "I will disclose 15 names connected to the Epstein investigation that were kept out of public records for years. The American people deserve transparency." A wave of gasps moved across the room. Every camera lens zoomed in. Massie began reading names one by one, steady and composed, letting each syllable land like a hammer. Some lawmakers froze. Others looked down, avoiding eye contact. Even the reporters forgot to blink. Across the city, former National Security official Kash Patel sat in a studio, watching the hearing unfold live. Producers had invited him for commentary, expecting a routine discussion. Instead, Kash leaned forward, eyes narrowing as Massie finished the list. "This," Kash said quietly, "is going to expose far more than people realize." The host blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" Kash exhaled slowly. "It is not just about the names. It is about who protected them." The studio fell silent. Even the control room stopped talking. Kash Patel was about to say something that would change his career forever. Kash Patel leaned closer to the microphone, choosing his words carefully. "Look," he began, "I worked inside federal agencies for years. I know how information moves. I know who signs off on redactions. And I know what it means when names vanish from documents without a legal reason." The host shifted nervously in her chair. "You're suggesting someone inside the system protected these individuals?" "I am saying," Kash replied, "there is no way 15 high-profile connections disappear unless someone with authority wanted them gone." The clip spread across social media within minutes. Viewers froze the screen, replayed every line, and questioned what Kash was hinting at. Inside the FBI headquarters, however, the reaction was immediate. Senior officials gathered in a closed conference room, watching Kash's statement with growing irritation. He was a former insider, someone who understood how the internal machinery worked. His words carried weight, far more than a random commentator. "He cannot say that on national television," one executive muttered. "He already did," another replied, "and millions have seen it." Meanwhile, back at the Capitol, Massie had finished his testimony. Reporters swarmed him with questions, but he pushed through the crowd, offering only one sentence. "Transparency is not optional." As the hearing ended, a staffer hurried to Massie with a phone in hand. "Congressman, you should see this. Kash Patel just went live reacting to your list." Massie took the phone, watched a few seconds, and raised an eyebrow. "This," he murmured, "is going to turn the entire town upside down." But Kash Patel was not done yet. He was preparing to reveal why those 15 names mattered more than anyone expected. Inside the studio, producers signaled that Kash Patel had 1 minute left. They expected a closing remark, maybe a safe summary. Instead, Kash adjusted his earpiece, straightened his posture, and spoke with a calm intensity that made everyone in the room stop moving. "There's something the public never understood about the Epstein case," he said. "Those names were not removed to protect the investigation. They were removed to protect careers." The host looked stunned. "Careers inside which agency?" Kash paused. Inside federal law enforcement. The control room erupted into chaos. Directors yelled to cut the commercial, but the network could not. They were live with millions watching. Kash continued. "When you hide the identities of powerful individuals connected to a criminal case, you create leverage, pressure. That is how certain officials maintain influence. It is not justice. It is insulation." The host swallowed hard. "Are you claiming the FBI used this information as political currency?" "I am claiming," Kash said, "that certain officials inside the FBI knew exactly what was in those files and chose silence over accountability." The clip hit the internet like an explosion. Within 20 minutes, the FBI press office issued a short, defensive statement that avoided every meaningful question. Commentators call it the most nervous response they had released in years. Back at FBI headquarters, A senior official slammed his laptop shut. "We cannot let this stand. He is exposing internal processes on national television. We have to discredit him." Another shook his head. Too late. He just confirmed what half the country suspected. Meanwhile, at the Capitol, Massie received a text message from a source inside the government. "You forced the first crack. Kash is about to break the second." Massie stared at the message, realizing the scale of what he had set in motion. Kash Patel, however, was already on his way out of the studio, unaware that his phone was about to receive a call that would change the trajectory of his entire career. Kash Patel stepped out of the studio into the cold afternoon air, his phone buzzing nonstop. Friends, former colleagues, journalists, even strangers were sending messages. Most were supportive. A few were warnings. But one call stood out. The number belonged to a former senior investigator who rarely contacted anyone. Kash answered. "Talk to me?" The voice on the other end whispered, "You just stepped onto a battlefield you cannot see." Kash stopped walking. "What do you know?" "There are documents you have never been allowed to view," the investigator said. "Internal memos, chain of custody notes, requests for redactions. They show exactly who blocked those Epstein files. If those memos ever go public, careers inside the Bureau will not survive." Kash tightened his grip on the phone. "Who ordered it?" Silence, then a slow exhale. Two officials still working at the top of the Bureau. They never thought this would resurface. They assumed no one would dare connect the dots. Kash looked around instinctively, as if someone might be watching. "Why tell me now?" "Because Massie naming those 15 individuals just forced their hand," the investigator replied. "They are preparing a response. They will deny everything, then try to turn the narrative on you. So they want me discredited." "They want you gone," the voice said. "But you still have one advantage." Kash narrowed his eyes. "What advantage?" "You know the system from the inside. You know what to ask for. If you request specific memos publicly, they cannot bury them without raising suspicion." Kash ended the call, heartbeat steady but heavy. He understood exactly what this meant. The fight was no longer political commentary. It was now institutional. Across town, Thomas Massie received a briefing from his staff. They showed him Kash's studio clip, then the FBI statement, then a list of officials who had suddenly canceled their meetings for the day. Massie leaned back in his chair. "They are circling the wagons. That means we hit a nerve." In the FBI conference room, one official slammed a folder onto the table. "Patel just opened the door. If he names those memos, we are finished." The director glared at the room. "Then make sure he never gets them." But they were already too late. Kash Patel had made up his mind. Tomorrow morning, he would go public with a demand that would shatter the silence the Bureau had maintained for years. The next morning, Washington woke up to a political earthquake. Kash Patel appeared on the steps of a federal courthouse, surrounded by a wall of reporters. Cameras clicked, microphones were shoved forward, and live broadcasts cut in from every major network. No one expected him to speak publicly again so soon. But Kash looked calm, almost surgical. "Yesterday," he began, "I spoke about hidden information in the Epstein case. Today, I am making a formal request." He held up a sheet of paper. "This is a demand for the release of 7 internal FBI memos. These memos document who ordered redactions, who approved them, and why 15 names were concealed from the public." The crowd erupted with questions. "Do you have evidence? Are you accusing the Bureau of misconduct? Do you fear retaliation?" Kash raised a hand. "I worked inside these agencies. I know the rules. These memos exist. The Bureau knows they exist. If the FBI has nothing to hide, they should release them immediately." Inside FBI headquarters, alarms went off. Staffers rushed through hallways. Phones rang nonstop. The director watched the broadcast with a clenched jaw. "He is forcing our hand," an advisor muttered. The director responded coldly. "He is forcing his own end." Meanwhile, Thomas Massie viewed the press conference from his office. He nodded slightly, impressed by Kash's precision. "He gave him no room to spin this," Massie said. "Brilliant." A staffer approached quietly. "Congressman, our internal contact reached out again." Massie raised an eyebrow. What now? They say the memos Cash requested are real. But the bigger problem is the 8th memo. Massie froze. 8th? The staffer nodded. It was written by a senior FBI official. It outlines a reason the 15 names were hidden. The reason was not security. It was personal protection. Massie stood up slowly. Does Cash know? No, not yet. Massie looked toward the window, watching traffic move through the streets of Washington. Cash just set off a chain reaction, he said quietly. But when he learns about that 8th memo, the fallout will be twice as big. At that exact moment, Kash Patel's phone buzzed. A new message, a number he did not recognize. He opened it. Only 2 words appeared. 8th memo. Cash felt a chill run through him. Someone was telling him the story was much bigger than he thought. Kash Patel stared at the message on his phone. 2 words. No context. No signature. 8th memo. He immediately knew this was not a prank. The timing was too precise. The tone was too deliberate. And the sender had somehow used a secure line. Cash stepped away from the courthouse, moving toward a quiet side street. He dialed the number back. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Then a text appeared. Do not call. Wait. Cash slipped the phone into his pocket, his instincts firing. Something inside the FBI was breaking. Someone had decided to leak information from inside, and they had chosen him as the target. Meanwhile, inside a secure FBI conference room, tension crackled like static. The director stood at the head of the table, surrounded by senior officials. That press conference gives us a problem, one official said. He did not just ask for the memos. He named the process. He named the approvals. He is too specific. Another added, if he finds out about the 8th memo, the one written by Harris. The director snapped. He will not. But the room knew the truth. The 8th memo was dangerous. It documented the moment an FBI senior officer decided to protect 15 clients for personal reasons, not legal ones. That memo could end careers. Across town, Thomas Massie received a folder from his source. He opened it. Inside was a summary, not the memo itself, but enough to confirm it existed. He whispered, "This is worse than I thought." His aide asked, "Should we warn Cash?" Massie shook his head. "Not yet. He needs to receive the full memo first. If we ward him too early, the Bureau will move to shut every door he has." Back on the street, Cash's phone buzzed again. You exposed 7 memos. They will release those to distract you. The 8th is the one they fear. You will get it soon. Cash felt his adrenaline spike. Someone was orchestrating a slow leak, and they wanted him to follow the trail. Suddenly another message arrived. Check your email. Do it now. Cash ducked into a coffee shop, sat at a corner table, and opened his inbox. At the top was an encrypted message with no sender. He tapped it. A document began to load. A waitress approached. "Sir, are you all right? You look pale." Cash did not hear her. He was staring at the title of the document. Internal Memorandum. Subject, Redaction Directive. Author, Deputy Director Harris. He had just received the 8th memo, and what he read in the first paragraph made his entire career flash before his eyes. Kash Patel scrolled down the document, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. The 8th memo was not long, but every sentence felt like a detonation. The first line alone was enough to end a career. Due to the potential reputational harm to senior government personnel, the following 15 individuals must remain redacted from all public filings. Cash blinked. Reputational harm? That was not a legal standard. That was protection. He kept reading, each sentence worse than the last. Disclosure could influence ongoing political dynamics and compromise relationships vital to departmental operations. Then the line that confirmed everything he suspected. This directive is to prevent exposure during an active election cycle. Cash pushed his chair back, stunned. This was not just concealment. This was calculated political shielding signed by a top FBI deputy director. The waitress approached again, gently. "Sir, do you need water?" Cash finally looked up, forcing a smile. "No, thank you." He returned to the memo. At the bottom, the signature glared back at him in bold type. Deputy Director Harris. For years, Harris was rumored to be untouchable inside the Bureau, a power broker who made decisions with zero fear of consequence. This memo proved why. He acted like no one would ever see it, but Kash was staring at it. Across town, Massie received a short text from his contact. He has it. Massie exhaled. The moment we crossed the point of no return. Back inside FBI headquarters, panic spread. A tech specialist rushed into the director's office. "Sir, we detected unauthorized access to an internal memo." The director jolted upright. "Which memo?" "The 8th. The room froze. No one spoke. Then the director whispered, "How did it get out?" The tech replied, "We do not know, but whoever downloaded it used Patel's secure channel." The director slammed his fist on the table. "Then Patel has it. He will go public." A senior official shook his head. "He will not. That memo ends him. If he shows it, the Bureau will accuse him of mishandling classified information." The director grinned darkly. "And that is exactly what we will do." Meanwhile, Kash closed his laptop and stepped outside, his mind already racing through the implications. If he released a memo, the Bureau would attack him. If he stayed silent, the truth would stay buried. His phone buzzed once more. A new message from the same anonymous number. "They will try to destroy you before tonight. Do not let them control the narrative." Then a second message. "A senator wants to meet. He has evidence that supports the memo." Kash looked up at the cloudy sky, realizing the storm he had stepped into was bigger than anything he had ever faced. But he also understood something else. Now that he had the 8th memo, the FBI was no longer trying to protect reputations. They were trying to protect themselves. Kash Patel walked quickly through the crowded sidewalk, checking over his shoulder. The memo sat encrypted on his phone, but its weight felt physical, like a stone pressing against his pocket. Every instinct told him the Bureau was already mobilizing against him. His phone buzzed again. "Meet at 2 p.m. Do not bring anyone." Attached was an address near the Senate offices. Kash headed toward a waiting ride, forcing himself to stay calm. If a senator truly wanted to meet, it meant someone else in the government was ready to expose what the FBI had tried to bury. Across the city, Thomas Massie sat with his staff, reviewing several new messages from insiders. "They are moving fast," his aide said. Massie nodded. "The Bureau understands the danger now. They will try to flip the story before Kash can speak." "What do we do?" Massie stood. "We get ahead of them." He instructed his staff to prepare a formal oversight demand for the memos Kash had requested. "All 8, he said. He paused. "Especially the 8th. Back inside FBI headquarters, the director received an emergency briefing. "Sir, news outlets are already speculating about an unofficial memo." An advisor warned. "If that 8th memo surfaces, it will look like a deliberate cover-up." The director's eyes narrowed. "We need to isolate Patel. Discredit him before he makes a move." A communications officer stepped forward. "We drafted a statement suggesting Patel misrepresented internal documents. It will cast doubt on his credibility." The director smirked. "Good. Release it in 1 hour." Meanwhile, Kash arrived at the Senate office building. The hallways were quiet, too quiet for mid-afternoon. He was directed to a small private conference room. A tall senator entered moments later, closing the door behind him. "Kash," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming on short notice." Kash replied, "I was told you have information." The senator locked the door. "I do, but first, you need to understand the scale of this." He placed a thin folder on the table. Inside were summaries of communications between high-ranking FBI officials discussing reputational risk, electoral timing, and political fallout. It was the same language used in the 8th memo. Kash looked up. "This proves internal coordination. It confirms Harris did not act alone." The senator nodded. "And there is more." He slid a second document across the table. "This is a whistleblower statement from a Bureau employee. It alleges that senior leadership intentionally misled lawmakers for 3 years about the Epstein records." Kash's breath caught. The senator leaned forward. "You need to release what you have. Do not wait for the Bureau to strike first." Kash hesitated. If I do that, they will accuse me of exposing classified material. They will attack you no matter what, the senator said. But if you step forward with evidence, you will not stand alone. Kash closed the folder. Outside the room, two unknown individuals watched from a distance, communicating silently into their earpieces. One whispered, "He has the memo. The window to stop him is closing." Kash Patel left the Senate office with the folder hidden beneath his jacket. The hallway felt narrower than before, every footstep echoing louder than it should. He knew the Bureau was watching. The senator knew it too. Outside, the sky had darkened. Heavy clouds gathered above Washington, mirroring the pressure swelling around him. As Kash approached the street, his phone vibrated again. "They will strike today. Prepare your statement." No name, same sender. He quickened his pace. Across town, the FBI's emergency communications team finalized a carefully crafted narrative. Their statement insinuated that Kash had misinterpreted standard internal paperwork, hoping to frame him as reckless. The director reviewed the text. "Release it, then prepare talking points for later tonight." While that message was being typed, Thomas Massie was in his office, studying the 8th memo summary. He understood the magnitude instantly. "This is not a misunderstanding," he said. "This was deliberate suppression of information." His aide entered. "Congressman, the FBI just released a statement about Kash." Massie skimmed the post and shook his head. "They are trying to get ahead of him. That means Kash is about to move." Back on the street, Kash stopped beside a quiet bench and opened the senator's folder again. The whistleblower report was precise, written in steady handwriting that suggested fear, caution, and conviction. One sentence burned itself into his mind. Senior leadership believed that revealing the 15 names would threaten existing alliances and destabilize internal political relationships. Kash whispered, "They buried evidence to protect influence." He glanced around. Two men in dark jackets stood near a lamppost across the street. They were not talking, not moving, just watching. Kash slipped the folder back under his jacket and walked away calmly, resisting the urge to look over his shoulder. The anonymous sender messaged again. "The FBI will try to frame your next move as illegal. Do not let them control the story." A second message followed immediately. "Go public before they announce the investigation." Kash froze. "Investigation?" He typed back, "Are they opening one against me?" The reply came almost instantly. "Yes. They want to accuse you before you present the memo. They want your credibility gone." Kash felt a cold surge rush through him. This was now no longer just political. This was personal. At that same moment, in a secure meeting room inside FBI headquarters, the director received confirmation. "Sir," an official announced, "we are ready to initiate a formal inquiry into Patel's conduct." The director nodded. "Launch it." Meanwhile, Thomas Massie's phone buzzed with an alert. He read the headline, eyes narrowing. "FBI opens inquiry into former official after public claims." Massie stood up so fast his chair slid back. They moved first. Across Washington, Kash Patel read the same headline, standing alone on a corner as the wind picked up. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with sharp resolve. "They fired their shot," he whispered. "Now it is my turn." Tomorrow morning, he would reveal the 8th memo to the world, no matter the consequences. Morning arrived with sharp winds sweeping across Washington. News outlets buzzed with the FBI's inquiry into Kash Patel, repeating the same talking points the Bureau pushed overnight. Commentators debated his motives. Analysts speculated that he had overstepped, but Kash Patel did not watch any of it. He was already inside a small media room preparing for the press conference that would define the rest of his life. A staffer from the senator's office whispered, "Are you sure about this? Once you speak, there's no going back." Kash closed the folder containing the 8th memo and nodded. "If they are willing to attack me to bury this, then it is my responsibility to put it in the light." Outside, reporters packed the courtyard. Tripods covered the ground like a metal forest. The air pulsed with anticipation. At exactly 9 o'clock, Kash stepped up to the podium. The crowd erupted in camera flashes. He placed the folder down and spoke clearly. Yesterday, the FBI initiated an inquiry into me. They claim my statements were inaccurate. Today, I will show you the document they never wanted you to see." He held up the 8th memo. This is an internal directive written by Deputy Director Harris. It orders a concealment of 15 names for reasons unrelated to ongoing investigations. The justification cited is reputational protection during a politically sensitive period. Journalists went silent. Not a sound. Every microphone leaned toward him. Kash continued. "This memo proves that redactions were not made for legal reasons, but for political insulation. It reveals a deliberate effort to shield individuals from accountability. It confirms that senior officials misled both Congress and the public. Behind the scenes, inside FBI headquarters, alarms exploded across internal channels. Screens lit up with alerts. The director stared at the broadcast in horror. He showed it. An aide whispered. He actually showed it. Meanwhile, in the Capitol, Thomas Massie watched from his office with a look of grim satisfaction. "He left them no escape," Massie said quietly. Back at the podium, Kash placed a memo on a document table where cameras could zoom in. "I have already delivered copies to members of Congress," he said. "I have delivered a copy to an independent oversight panel. This information is now public record." A reporter fired the first question. "Kash, are you prepared for retaliation?" Kash answered without hesitation. "I was prepared the moment I read the memo." Another asked, "Do you believe the FBI leadership should resign?" Kash replied, "I believe leadership must be held accountable for actions that compromise public trust." At that moment, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A message appeared on the screen. "You did it." Harris resigned. Kash looked up as a wave of commotion swept through the crowd. Reporters suddenly checked their phones. Alerts popped up across every network. Breaking news. Senior FBI Deputy Director announces immediate resignation following memo leak. The courtyard exploded with shouts. Kash exhaled slowly, not in triumph, but in relief. Later that evening, as Washington processed a fallout, Thomas Massie sent him a short message. "You ended a wall of silence that stood for years. The response was worth the risk." Kash replied with a simple truth. The public deserved the truth. That is all that matters. And as the sun set over the Capitol dome, Washington understood something new. The 8th memo had changed everything, and Kash Patel's FBI career had ended, but his impact on the system had only just begun. Washington did not sleep that night. Every major news network ran nonstop coverage of the 8th memo. Analysts tried to decode the language. Former officials scrambled to distance themselves. Lawmakers issued statements demanding emergency hearings. The political world spun faster than it had in years. But inside a quiet townhouse on the outskirts of the city, Kash Patel finally allowed himself a moment of silence. He sat at his kitchen table, reading through dozens of messages from supporters, whistleblowers, and even critics who admitted he had forced a necessary conversation. For the first time in days, he exhaled without tension. Then his phone rang. It was Thomas Massie. Kash answered. "You saw the reaction?" Massie chuckled dryly. "The reaction? Kash, you just started a full-scale oversight battle. The Bureau is scrambling. Half the Judiciary Committee wants hearings before the end of the week." Kash leaned back. "Good.